Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Well, folks, today let's jump into kind of an arena. Recently, the question came up, when should I leave an organization? And of course, your mind, I'm sure plenty of you, your minds have just instantly populated with things that would cause you to leave an organization. But leaving an organization is a deeply personal and professional decision between you as an individual and your family, right? To be able to figure that out. So today, I'm simply going to talk about it generally, right? And I'm never going to advocate that you leave your organization. There's always going to be a decision you have to make uh, because that's only you and only you know the organization that you're working at, right? So, but so let's talk about a few things. First of all, let's hit some real obvious things to begin with. If your organization is unsafe or operates in an unsafe manner, definitely should put that in the con column if you're having pros and cons. If you're creating a pros and cons to stay or go. Um, Unsafe organizations that allow unsafe acts to occur and they don't correct those. That's definitely a bad, a negative thing. And not only does it put you and your team at danger, but it also puts anybody really in the vicinity, right? So, and not only are you talking about livelihood now, but you're talking about longevity of your life, and that's just not good. So, I would say safety has to bring truth, number one. Next, are they ethical? Do they operate in an ethical way? Uh, are they under ethics? Let's look at quality. Are they making decisions that are compromising the quality of their product to squeeze out more profit? That isn't to say to find more efficient ways to make their product. That's different, right? But we're talking about, are they compromising quality, right? So if what they made, say, 2 years ago lasted, customers 5 to 8 years, hypothetically, just throwing it out there, um, where they found a way to make it more cheaply, but it only lasts maybe a year or two. That's and it's not even so much that as it is, it's the tendency, it's the mindset. It's really going down an unethical road, right? Also, the safety of a product. We talked about safety working in the organization, but also the safety of the product. So, if they're making products because of that quality is put in question, maybe create a safety, an unsafe condition, right? A potentially unsafe condition. So that just amplifies, the intensity of the safety of the products, right? So there's ethics in that regard. Of course, there's fairness. Are they treating employees fairly? Uh, are they enabling prima donnas in your organization to kind of run over other people? It's the old narcissist can get away with things because they're finding it being effective, but yet they're destroying the culture of the organization, right? This is something that you're going to have to assess for yourself, right? Because it's definitely difficult to be able to figure some of these things out and what the root causes are. But when you dig into it, are people just running other people over? Is this a everyone for themselves kind of organization where people are kind of backstabbing? There's rumors flying around. There's defamation is flying all over the place because people are talking badly about others and saying untrue things and just creating drama and toxicity, which just erodes cohesion, right? Team cohesion. And that definitely is a factor. If you look at your organization and the people working, whether it's in your smaller teams within the organization, and then as you broaden, as you go further out within it, are is the organization allowing the teams to flourish, right? Or are they constantly keeping people at odds or department at odds with one another? Is there a blame game kind of a environment? But it then turns into where people just clam up. People don't want to share because, well, I don't want to throw so and so under the bus. Well, that's true, but we have to figure out the problem, right? So if it becomes so protective in that regard that essentially anyone in the organization could sabotage the operation because everybody is so afraid of what might happen from that individual or the organization or whomever. Well, now people don't feel safe in that organization, right? There's a safety element to that now because they feel like they don't have a voice, that somehow that they're going to be, singled out or whatever. You can see how things could get really out of control. Depends on the organization and how you operate. Uh, you know, human conditions, right? You think of negative behaviors, anything that's negative, right? In my book, I list out a swath of negative behaviors and to avoid, and then avoid doing and or becoming, uh, exhibiting, and then positive behaviors. But I'm not going to get into that list because we could literally turn a video into each single one. But Google negative behaviors, Google positive behaviors, make a list and go, oh my gosh, right? Figure it out. But one of the things I'll also say is if you're trying to figure this out, even if you aren't able to, maybe mentally or even if you can't put your finger on it, but you just don't feel satisfied there, it might be that you already know that the organization isn't the right fit for you. The alignment of the people, maybe the people are aggressive, right? They're not very empathetic toward one another. They don't work with one another. They don't have patience. There isn't a kind professionalism in the environment. If the alignment isn't there, the alignment isn't there. And there's no need trying to justify it either to try to go, well, this is why I'm leaving. Yeah, in general, that's your decision to make. It's nothing where you have to run around, Uh, but all that said, now, if they're not listening to you, if you have ideas that aren't being heard, or if they're just kind of brushing you off, and you find that this is also true potentially of other people in your team as well. So there's either or both. That could be a problem, right? That's definitely not a place that's probably building a good, healthy organizational culture. There isn't a team cohesion or even a care for it. They're just kind of trying to get through the day and pushing people off, not listening to you, not taking in some of your inputs. Uh, if they're pitting people against one another, right? That sort of thing. All of these things, negative behaviors, positive behaviors, you kind of have to weigh it out for yourself. But I would definitely say that anything that's unethical, and you can throw a lot in that bucket, how they operate. Are they doing things that are underhanded, right? Are they nefarious? They're doing bad things. Maybe they're a part of some really ominous activities. Well, it's pretty obvious, right? And large or small, if you're part of an organization and there's that is going out into the world, that negative energy is going out into the world in slivers or in in mass, in large mass, that energy is coming back, and it's probably coming back on you and affecting not only your professional life, but it's also affecting your personal life. You could look at this, as we're talking about when should I leave an organization. This is any, friend groups, civic organizations, relationships, all of it kind of falls into the same category, right? When should I step aside? Well, when it's not healthy, when it's unsafe, unhealthy, and misaligned, right? It can just be alignment. You know, you can have some folks who are very creative, and there are other folks who are a little bit more logical and that sort of thing. But the bottom line is people have to work together. But if they're not, if you get into this cliquish kind of thing, now you've got organization with clicky groups. It's almost like high school all over again, right? Where the clicky groups were kind of battling against one another. Definitely worse the further back you go in our culture to see how those groups were toward one another. Now, probably not as big of a deal. But the bullying thing that you do see in schools now, which is sad, you do see it in organizations. And if the organization, your HR, your leadership team, leadership management, functionals, and all that, if they're bullying employees, or if employees are bullying one another, right, threatening them, and all these kinds of things, being being just going over the top, right? Toxic, right? Toxic. Let's just pull it, call it what it is. It's toxic. Is that a healthy environment for you? Right? This is something you have to establish for yourself and then make the call. Obviously, it's going to be difficult because if you're depending on, and this is the tough part too, an organization knows you need this job because it provides a certain level of benefit to provide for your family. So they kind of know they got you, right? So you have to make an ethical call and say, you know what? It's not worth uh, all of this because this is coming back on me and I don't feel good working here and it's not healthy for me. I need to figure something else out. And then maybe you make your plan and over time you decide to leave and move on to another organization or you start your own business, whatever. It might be that this is a clue that you've outgrown some of these organizations' ability to create healthy organizational cultures so that then okay, I can probably establish my own, small business, 1, 2, 3, whatever, smaller to medium size, all the way up, and depending on where you are and what you're doing. And maybe you decide, hey, I know I can do this better, because I really take care of people and I like to build good teams. And your experience in these toxic cultures like this, organizational cultures, could be a momentum kick, momentum boost to get you to propel you into a leadership role or into a role of being able to develop, really positive culture somewhere else. So that's another thing. Is the organization, do they look at themselves and see and go, hey, yeah, and own where they've made mistakes and they're trying to work on it? An organization and individuals in it, right? Because we're not perfect. So if you're expecting perfection, you can forget about that. The grass is never going to be greener, just a different shade of green, no matter where you go. It is always going to require that you water that grass, right? If you're not putting in the energy, right? Because we can talk about the organization as a whole and people in it, right? Looking out, but we have to look in. Am I a person who's contributing to toxic behavior? Am I doing my job? Am I giving 100%? Am I? Make sure we got our own ducks, flying in formation before we make start projecting outward. If we have our ducks flying in formation, then it becomes a lot more straightforward, right? If you're a person of high integrity and and you're an accountable person and a just person, this is going to be a pretty simple thing for you to figure out. If you're a person who's playing the games and being in there in that toxic culture and spreading the rumors and in the fray, then you're already probably feeling pretty pulled down by this organization. It's probably sucking a lot of the life right out of you. So that's also going to be pretty apparent in your own life because you just can't leave all of it at work. If you're not who you are at work and at home, if you're not that same person, you can't live two different lives. So if you're not genuinely living and being forthright and honest and handling things with integrity at work, that's just eating away at you in your personal life. Negative energy you put out there, remember, anything negative that you throw out into the world or nefarious or manipulative that you do in the world, that comes back to you, right? That comes back to you. It's for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? Physics proves this. So you don't need to go any further than that, but we could, right? We can go into all kinds of areas and show analogies where you throw negative energy out into the world, it's going to come back towards you. So make sure you've got your ducks flying in formation. But then once you establish, hey, this organization, I don't think so. I think it's time for me to move on. And, don't feel bad about it. Don't let it weight you down because if you're making all the best efforts to do the right things, then good things are going to follow you if you move on to another organization. As you move on, make sure that you vet the organization you're going to. This is just one little cute. I say cute, but I say cute with a little snarkiness in my tone. I love it when an organization in interview processes will say, "Well, tell us a couple times or whatever when you failed." Look, folks, we're human beings. We fail on a daily basis. You can list all of those. We fail so often in micro ways, right? That that to say, well, tell us about when you failed. Okay, fine. There might be a couple instances you'll talk about from your professional life where it's like, oh yeah, I said this, and then this is what I learned. Da da da. But then flip it around when your turn comes and say, well, I'd like to know a couple of times that your organization failed, and what did you do to rectify it? You know, the door swings both ways, right? If it doesn't, then you know that that's a dictatorship. Now, it doesn't mean that, the owners and the leaders are running the organization. They get to define the variables by which that occurs, no question. But what they don't get to do is to kind of take on a bullying mindset of not acting ethically in both ways. If they want to know about your decision making abilities and what you did, it's certainly fair to know how they operate too, right? So if an organization balks at that, that's a pretty good indicator. Another one is the team here coachable? If they hesitate for a second, you're pretty confident that they're not really that coachable, or they haven't tried, or there's problems there, right? Or they might explain, well, they're coachable, but this is where we're at. We're building, and that's fair, right? If they're owning it, that's fair. Then you go, okay, that's cool. They're owning it. That's a healthy thing, is to acknowledge, hey, our organization has we've tried hard, we've struggled, but we're still trying. And hey, we would love to bring you on, and because we think that you could help build on our positive organizational culture, and build that momentum to build our team. So we'd love to have you. That is a fantastic receptive statement that you could get from a hiring team. So, okay, folks, just a few little things for you to for you to consider while you're trying to figure out, should I leave an organization or not? Deeply personal. Don't let anybody ever tell you what you should do, because remember, organizations aren't there to make you happy, right? We're there to do a job to serve the customers. But at the same time, if the vehicle to do that is broken down, it's certainly fair for you to consider and figure out if I want to ride on this broken down vehicle, right? And then to make your own personal decision to leave it or not. Okay, folks, that's enough for today. Hit that good green domino to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage folks. And when you do that, not only are we helping to shape and build a healthy culture, but we're helping to transform our own lives as well. And that's a special thing. So don't take it for granted. All right. Well, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.